Welcome to Flight School. I'm your instructor, Micah. I'm not a real-world instructor. Do not use any of the information given during this tutorial in a real-world aircraft as it may harm you or someone else. Let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to cover the four forces acting on an aircraft, and we'll cover the parts of the aircraft today. First off, let's go ahead and cover the parts of the aircraft real fast. I'll only cover the major ones. Obviously, you got your main wing. You got your fuselage, horizontal stabilizer, vertical stabilizer, landing gear, your propeller, then your struts. Those are your main parts of the aircraft that you need to be aware of. We'll get into control surfaces a little bit later after we cover the four fundamental forces on an aircraft. The four fundamental forces acting on an aircraft while they fly are lift, gravity, thrust, and drag. Obviously, gravity is wanting to bring the aircraft down. Thrust is what is produced either by the propeller or some other type of engine that actually makes the aircraft go forward. Drag is what the air does to the aircraft to make it slow down, aka there's air molecules in front of an object, just like walking down the street, you have drag that actually slows your aircraft down. Then you have lift. Lift is a bit more complicated than the others, but in general, it makes you want to go up. Lift makes you want to go up, hence the name lift. Now, how does lift work? Let's look at the wing of the aircraft here, and we'll get into that. All right, there we go. So, lift used to be known as basically Bernoulli's principle, which basically means that fast air would move over the top, slower air would move over the bottom because there's more ground to cover on top. Both molecules had to end up at the end at the same time, and therefore you had a high and low pressure. That's actually scientifically inaccurate, and there was a paper released, I think back in 1993, that destroyed that principle, saying, hey, listen, that's not what's causing the aircraft to actually have lift. Now, the idea is sound in regards to high and low pressure, but the idea that two molecules of air both have to get to the edge of the wing at the same time and leave the wing at the same time is just false. So we're going to cover the actual scientifically proven way of how an aircraft actually generates lift. First off, you need to know a couple of things. One, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, so I'm going to explain this as best I can in layman's terms to hopefully allow you to understand how your wing generates lift. The main thing you need to know is there's a high and low pressure. So basically what happens, there's a high pressure on the bottom and low pressure on top of the wing when you're traveling. Now, scientifically, high pressure wants to get to the low pressure. So you would think, okay, if high pressure wants to get to low pressure, well then high pressure would push up on the air underneath the wing, would push up on the wing because it's high pressure, to try to get on top of the wing, which is where a low pressure is. Okay, that makes sense, right? That's how you generate lift. High pressure pushes to a low pressure. That makes sense. But you got to think, okay, for a second, why is there a low pressure and why is there a high pressure? So that gets a little bit more complicated. First off, I want you to note one little simple thing. You'll notice the wing is not flat. It's not horizontal completely. It's slightly tilted up, and that's important as we get into how it actually generates the lift. So, molecules, obviously the teeny little things, right? You have air molecules. What happens is because you have a slight tilt of the aircraft wing, right? It's slightly tilted upwards. What happens is air, right? Air comes, hits the wing. Now it's slightly tilted up, which means more air is hitting the bottom of the wing than hitting, obviously, the top back here. There's no air hitting here. There's almost a vacuum up here because there's no air there. Because if you look at it from the front view, perfectly horizontal, you can't see the back of the wing. You can't see it's not flat, right? So obviously as air hits this wing, what's going to happen is there's going to be more air molecules down here than there's going to be up here. What is that? Well, if there's a more concentration of air molecules down here and less air molecules up here, well, that creates a high and low pressure. There's your high and low pressure. That's simple, guys. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but why does the air stick to the wing? Because if the air just came and hit right here and just went straight off, then you wouldn't have that low pressure that you're needing right there on the wing to generate the lift. Without that, if it just went straight off, you'd basically just stall and fall out of the sky. So you got to think, okay, so why does it stick to the wing? Well, if you think up here, right, and down here, the atmospheric pressure is the same. But right under the wing is high, and right above is low. So what does that do? Well, right here, the air is low pressure. So the high pressure that's up here, I should say high, it's just higher. There's the F4 just to go flying by. But there's a higher up here. It's actually pushing down on this back part of the wing because there's a low pressure there, which means the air that's already there, even though it's still low, is actually being forced to stay with the wing. Why is that important? Well, here comes the second factor of why an aircraft flies. This is important. This gets into some of Newton's laws. I think it's first and third law. Something at rest must stay at rest unless an act force, something forces it to move. And then you also have every action has this equal and opposite reaction, those simplistic ideas. So what does that mean? So because the air is making this want to go up, to create lift, push up, therefore this has to make the air want to go down. That's the equal and opposite reaction, right? What does that mean? Basically, air is streaming along the top and streaming along the bottom. That's why it's designed like this. It actually comes out faster. Now, what does that mean? That means the wind that's on the bottom and top combines on the rear and creates a backwash. This backwash basically is almost like a jet pushing the aircraft forward. And that's the whole concept between an electric turbofan engine that you see on whether it be a jetliner or a private jet or whatever. The concept is the same. You're creating a backwash, you're creating a force just by using physics. So as the air hits this, pushing this up, your aircraft is actually pushing the wind or the air down like this at a slight degree angle. That downward wash is actually pushing your aircraft up and into the sky. I know it can kind of seem a little complicated. There's some great videos out there that go into the actual principles, the high and low pressure, and then the thing called backwash using Newton's first and third laws. But in general, you just need to know your aircraft creates lift based upon thrust and your wing surface area. The more wing surface area you have, the more lift you can generate. The more thrust you have, the more lift you can generate. So Cessna 172 has an engine and it has a wing, and that generates thrust. The engine generates thrust, the wings generate the lift, therefore you can get up into the sky. That's basically how your aircraft flies in regards to lift. I know it can sound complicated. Again, I understand that, and you're maybe a little confused what I'm talking about. That's okay. Just know high and low pressure, downwash, you're going to get up in the air, okay? Now, let's go over the control surfaces and how it manipulates the airflow and how it changes what you're doing. You have your ailerons, which are on the wings. You'll see them here, left and right. And what that does is if I go left, what does this do? Creates drag, makes the high pressure, I should say, on top, low pressure on top, not as much, which means what? This is actually going to go down because it's not generating as much lift. On the right side, however, I'm creating more low pressure on top, more space to be occupied by molecules, but there's still the same amount of molecules, so I'm actually generating more lift on the right, which means if I push my yoke to the left, as you're seeing here, that means my aircraft is actually going to roll towards the left wing, which has less lift. Same right wing. Right wing, if I go to push my yoke to the right, I'm again creating drag on the right, creating lift on the left, and it makes it want to turn to the right because this has less lift, therefore it goes down. This has more lift, therefore it goes up. That's basically how you go left and right. That's your pitch. So your roll. That's how you're rolling. Your pitch is done by, on your horizontal stabilizer, you'll see these things. These are your elevators, right? So basically, what does that do? Again, if I do this, what does that happens there? If you guessed, it creates drag and therefore makes my aircraft go down. That's actually wrong. You're like, wait a second. You just showed us this, and this creates drag, which means that this is actually going to go down. Correct. But think about it. Think about center of gravity, which is right here. I'm actually creating what? Less lift on the rear of the aircraft, which means the nose is going to go up and the rear is going to go down. Ah, there it is. Now, if I push forward, you're going to see I'm creating more lift in the rear. What does that mean? The rear is going to go up and the nose is going to go down. I know it's a little bit backwards, but you got to think of it's no longer on the center of gravity. So that's how it works like that. And then the last one we're going to cover here is, the second to last one is the rudder. So you'll see this going back and forth back here. That's your rudder, and it's pushing to the left and right. It's creating drag left and right, and that's what's going to give your yaw. So the aircraft is going to, like this, create more drag here. So what does that mean? That means I'm actually going to make the nose go this direction, and you can see the wheel actually turns that direction. So you can see it right there almost in action, how it's going to work there. So that's your yaw, that's your rudder, and you can control that using rudder pedals if you have them. I do recommend those. Anyway, so last one we're going to cover here are the flaps. Flaps are used usually on short takeoffs or on landings. Well, you're going to use them on landings. And how that works is, I'm going to go ahead and lower them here. As I've already covered, you may think, whoa, that's quite a bit of an angle, and that is, and I'll explain what happens. Again, more air on a smaller area being shot right here is, I mean, you got to think about it. Now the angle is dramatic, right? So there's a lot more air sitting here, and there's a lot less air up here because there's a gap, basically. You're creating this huge gap of low pressure, which means you're creating a whole lot more lift. What does that mean? That means you can fly slower. You need less speed to create the same amount of lift as if it was up. Like this, what it basically does, I have to have a certain amount of speed to create a certain amount of lift. When I lower them, I need less speed to create the same amount of lift, which means I can fly slower, which means I can take off sooner, or I can actually land softer. That's the big component of landing, is having your flaps out. And we'll get into that in landing, but it's important to know that basically creates a whole lot more drag. It does create some drag, and I'll get into that, but a whole lot more lift. Now, as you know, as wind hits that surface, it's going to create drag, which means what? You're going to have to push that throttle up a little bit more to counteract that drag. Counteract that. You're going to have to create more thrust to counteract the drag that's going to be on those flaps. So that's basically the 4 forces that act on the aircraft, including lift and the explanation there, parts of an aircraft and the control surfaces, and how those interact with the airflow, creating your allowing you to be able to control your aircraft. I hope this was informational and you learned some things. But if you didn't, well, I guess you just had fun watching, I guess. But thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time. We're going to cover the instrument panel inside the Cessna 172, and we're going to go ahead and get that baby started up and how you're going to do that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.